Thank you, Renee.
Hey, hello. Okay, I'm just getting this on my screen, and I guess I'll just double check. Does everybody see the PowerPoint on your screen right now? Here, I'll go to the cover to make it a little bit better. So does everybody see that on your screen? I've got a double screen, so I've been known to have that a little bit off in the past. So I'm just kind of making sure everybody sees what they should be seeing. So here is our agenda. We're gonna be a little bit experimental today. We're gonna be doing what we're calling a reverse panel discussion. So we have 3 panelists. I'm one of them. Sudie Whalen, who you can see on your screen, is a second one, and Carol Hirota, who you can also see on your screen, is a third one. So we will be the 3 panelists. We will be doing the panel discussion in reverse, meaning we'll be asking you questions instead of you asking us or having some moderator ask other panelists or whatever. You're going to be the askees and we're going to be the askers, basically. More on that here in a little bit. We're going to, these are kind of our introductions here. Before we got into the reverse panel, though, this was kind of based on a session from the CASAS Institute, back in June. It was a very innocuous session called Mentorship and Collaboration for Data Managers. It was at the very end of the Institute. It was one of those that I thought I'd get like 12 or 15 people at the end of the Institute. Everybody pooped out. Everybody insta-pooped out, you might say. So we'll just sort of limp along on this one and get her done. But then miraculously 300 people showed up. It ended up being an unexpectedly vigorous session for everybody, energizing, all those great, adjectives. So that got me thinking on stuff. I got talking to Sudie a couple times. I got talking to Carol a couple times, and before you know it, we kind of hatched a new session. So I do want to recap from that just because it was the antecedent to this. Some of the concepts were started from that session. And then we'll do, we've done the panel introduction, but I'll let them do a little deeper dive. One big thing here is, why on earth should you care why these panelists are asking you questions? So it's in reverse, so the panelists kind of have to explain themselves a little bit. Why are you wasting your time with us? So that's part of the reverse panel, is we, accept a little bit of onus that way. And then we'll get into some questions. What can we do for you? And then what can you do for us? We're going to kind of keep it simple, maybe 4 questions on each category, going back and forth, trying to do, some extra fact finding, you might say. So again, here are the panelists. Introduce Carol, introduce Sudie, introduce myself. More on them here shortly. Okay, so here's kind of a recap from that session. Is again, we started by just kind of saying, hey, what issues are keeping you awake at night? Focusing on data managers. We'll be talking about everybody, but the focus will be on data managers a little bit, because that was obviously the big focus of what we talked about at the CASAS Institute. And that's what Sudie and Carol and I have been talking about here over the last couple months since we did that session as well. How can we orient some of the things we do to benefit data managers? How can we be thinking about this role in, kind of a more meaningful, comprehensive way, et cetera, et cetera. So we started kind of as an icebreaker, and this is probably what got it so rollicking, as we just asked, what keeping you awake at night? We could have gone for hours on end and not even bothered getting into any of the other questions here. So a little bit of recap on some of the things I like to talk about with this is, first off, you see that little gendarme there. We like to talk about the data police, sheriff gonna get you, so everybody's a little worried about that. That's kind of how you start. What's keeping you awake at night? Dealing with the state, dealing with the feds, which sheriff is gonna get you this time on all the myriad of things you might do wrong. Another one of my favorite little topics is alphabet soup. That, of course, starts with everybody loves alphabet soup, right? How many people love alphabet soup? Raise your hand if you love alphabet soup. Everybody's going to raise their hand, right? Who doesn't like alphabet soup? So we've talked about that in the sense that everybody loves it, But, you know, hey, it can be kind of a pain because, hey, when you have alphabet soup, what always happens no matter what? Anybody want to help me out in the chat? What's always the problem with alphabet soup? Anybody know? You know, not enough, well, not enough vowels. Okay, somebody's a stickler for precision out there. I was just going to say not enough letters in general, but if you're having trouble with vowels, that's an even better answer. But hey, you're trying to spell data, D-A-T-A. Good luck finding a single A in that bowl of alphabet soup, much less two A's to spell D-A-T-A. Good luck with that, mission impossible, right? So like you're doing long sentences and then you really can't spell nothing. That's a big problem. So I relate it to data in that you never really have enough vowels. You never really have enough letters to spell everything. No matter what you do, you've got 125% chance of being incomplete all the time. There's never enough vowels to spell anything when you've got that darn alphabet soup. And then my final thing, just to kind of kick the cobwebs out and, you know, bring everybody back into this, is that house of mirrors analogy. How many, you know, this is less unanimous, but how many people are House of Mirrors fans? Everybody loves alphabet soup, but House of Mirrors, everybody's more like 50-50. Half the audience loves it, half the audience can live without the House of Mirrors. So whichever way it is, I'll just say if I'm in a House of Mirrors, I'm always like this guy in the picture. I'm always looking over my shoulder, trying to look over those mirrors so I can see the back of my head thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times, right? That just trips me out, how many times you can see the back of your head. And that's that kind of, whenever you do, you know, I think it's Isaac, you know, flipping Newton we're talking about here. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Isn't that Isaac Newton? Any physicists here? I think that's an Isaac Newton thing, right? That's my observation. Anyway, so Isaac Newton says for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's the House of Mirrors. You do something to fix your data. You're thinking you're doing something flippin-tastic, and but before you know it, all that fantastic work you do caused an equal and opposite reaction. You've got all these unforeseen problems you unwittingly created. You fix those problems, you unwittingly create more problems. You fix those problems, you unwittingly create more problems, and so on and so on and so on. You can't, no matter what you do, you keep seeing the back of your head, right? So those are my analogies. That's what keeps you awake at night, or at least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You know, we've got those problems that always keep us awake at night. Getting more to brass tacks, we talked about, you know, kind of rudimentary stuff, training networks, opportunities that might benefit this role. And then we kind of got a little cutesy talking about stuff like coaching and mentorship and how can we collaborate within the region and across the region. And then we also kind of talked about, hey, everybody's job description. Good luck if you can even name your own job description. But job descriptions usually do a laughably bad job at accurately describing what anybody does. I know that's true about my job description. Most people kind of admit, yeah, my job description doesn't really say all that much. So we talked about what you really do at your agency and got some really interesting answers. And then the kind of related to that is how can we leverage this? That's where the reverse panel hopefully will come in, is how can we start leveraging this position? Some of you I know have kind of done a lot of leveraging, you know, on the down low, and, you know, to your infinite credit, I would say, but there's gotten to be more of that, you know, in recent years. You know, that's something that really has been a benefit. Okay, so rudimentary stuff. People wanted, you know, this is back in June, everybody wanted more face-to-face training, more face-to-face networking. You know, we made all kinds of highfalutin promises. I'll just say that was kind of funny thing happened on the way to the forum part deux, though, where everybody thought we'd be all face-to-face by now, but here we are. We're still, you know, frittering away, zooming our lives away, you know, watching those sands of the hourglass disappear before our very eyes, just like we've been doing for the last couple years. But we hopefully will get back more into that as we move along. And then more access to networking, maybe not a big California thing, but we added that TE network meeting for all states, not just California. For my 2 cents, that's been kind of a successful evolution. So then moving on, we talked about how are we going to leverage this role. So, hey, if you're thinking, gee, Willikers, nobody's done nothing on that one yet, I'll just say, that's not true. We did do something, not nothing. We made some plans and began discussions to plan this session right now. That was my take home item. Hopefully it at least moves the ball a little bit. And then over here, we were also talking about, gee, Willikers, we'll look at things like mentorship and coaching, and that was also addressed by some of these discussions the three of us have to plan this session. So before I move on, I will define it. This was kind of where we all three talked, is just so you know what we're talking about here. We're using the term mentorship. We're using the term coaching. We're using the term collaboration. Collaboration, we're thinking everybody knows what that is, so we're not doing a definition. But coaching, just so you know, for this session, we're saying that's where an experienced person supports a learner in achieving specific goals by providing training and guidance. Very generic definition. It can be lots of different kinds of training and lots of different kinds of guidance, but just so you know, there's the definition. And then mentorship, good luck finding a definition that doesn't use the word within the word to define it. I couldn't find one that did it. So we'll just have to go with developmental relationship between a more experienced mentor and a less experienced protege or mentee. That's how we're going to be defining it here. Okay. So I think we don't want to spend too much more time getting into line item by line item debriefs. Let's get into the purpose of this presentation. So here's the list of panelists. Again, if you missed that at the beginning, I don't think many of you did. But again, part of this is to kind of introduce yourself, but to introduce yourself with the idea of, hey, why, might you want to listen to questions? Why might answering Jay's question or Sudi's question or Carol's question be worth your while? So to be fair, I'll start, before putting Carol or Sudi on the spot. So my name is Jay Wright from CASAS. I'm putting myself on the panel because I kind of came up with the idea to do the discussion, I guess. But also I was the one that did that session at Summer Institute. I really think we did have a good discussion. 300 plus showed up. Lots of people aired all kinds of dirty laundry. I kind of like it when people do that, contrary to popular belief. So I kind of wanted to, get the clothesline out and see if maybe, you might have some handy to air it out more. Hey, if you've got some really moldy stuff there at the bottom of the pile, that's even better. The moldier the laundry you're airing out, the better for me. So that's why you might want to listen to my questions. So I'll move it along. Sudi, you're next. I'm going, starting with the bottom, working my way up. So Sudi, you're next up on the elevator. Why should people be listening to you?
Gee Willikers, Jay.
That's right. Gee Willikers is the only good answer for that one, isn't it?
So I don't want to murder your dirty laundry analogy, so I'm going to leave that one where it was. Okay. But I'm Sudi Whalen. I'm the CalPro Deputy Director, and I'm also the PLC Institute Coordinator. And one of the conversations that Jay and I were having that spurred his brainchild of us doing this was just thinking about how can we be more supportive and how can we provide more guidance and more support and information and research-based best practices on how to approach data from a mentorship and a coaching perspective. When we initially started the conversation, I was thinking about the PLC Institute and how can we reinforce that within the PLC Institute in the coaching that we provide via the PLC Institute. But we realized it was a much larger conversation that support is needed in a lot of different places. So part of the reason to listen to me and to engage in this conversation with me is because I and the rest of CalPro genuinely care about your input, and we want to make sure we're being responsive to what your actual needs are. And so if that means airing the moldy, dirty laundry so we can figure out what that is, then we definitely want to hear from all of you. And we also want to talk about what we do actually provide and how we can make that even better by being responsive to what data managers, those who work with data managers, those who receive information from data managers, and anybody within that sphere needs, whether it's through our institutes, through our training, or even by doing webinars and different events. So we just want to make sure that we're being responsive to your needs and that we're leading with data and not trying to make data meet us. So that's my spiel for why I'm here. And I'm going to pass the buck over to Carol G. Willikers. Carol, what do you think?
Okay, thank you, Sudie, and thank you, Jay. So I am currently working with targeted technical assistance with the KTAP office. I am one of the staff, one of the coaches. We are working with, there are 5 coaches and 5 consortia that we are working with. And the team that I'm working with, I actually have the opportunity to work with their person who is responsible for their data and their assessment. So it's been a real nice opportunity to see how we can use coaching in that process. My past experience, though, has been a principal and director in Stockton at Stockton School for Adults. And we worked on the professional learning communities and data teams. And I have to share with you that the success of our teachers and our administrators and the counselors was really the data accuracy and the collaboration of the student data technicians at the school. What they did was so valuable because they needed to make sure that everything was accurately placed in, or they corrected it depending on if there were any mistakes. But they also worked very closely with the teachers on sharing reports weekly, monthly, and quarterly. So I think the role of that data person to me is like a foundation so that our teachers and counselors and administrators can do the good work to show evidence of student learning. And I think that's critical. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Carol, and thank you, Sudie. So we'll get into the questions here now. We've got, 4 or 5 questions, trying to keep it as simple as possible. 4 or 5 are in this category right here. What can we do for you? And you won't be that surprised to know the other category of questions is called, what can you do for us? So we're trying to keep it real simple that way. We'll start with some questions. And again, we're going to ask you, what sort of things can we do from CASA's point of view, from CalPro point of view, from the Cape TAP point of view? Maybe there's some other little threads with what I do, with what Carol does, with what Sudie does that also might be helpful. But with that in mind, what sort of things might you like to see from the various individuals and organizations that might allow us to do a better job, leveraging the role of data manager, promoting that role, helping you do your job more easily, etc. Hand up? No? Okay, I thought I saw a hand.
Linda, did you have a Lydia?
Yes,
sorry, did you have a question?
Hand up, but it was taken down, so I guess I'll take.
I was just waiting for you to finish, Jay. You know how I roll.
Okay.
You can always count on me to put my hand up first.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
That idea of support is so intriguing, especially for those of us data managers who have been around for a while and have had to build in our own support systems for a wide variety of reasons. That is a fantastic idea. Just across the board. So that comment, I want to get that out of the way first, is to have that support system. That would be amazing in whatever context that ends up developing to be, because there are data managers who are teachers, there are data managers who are admin, and there are data managers who are classified staff. So how that role ends up playing out, how that because traditionally PLCs are built for teachers. So how that would end up playing out for a data manager role would be very interesting. But the idea of having a support system for data managers is amazing because, like I said, those of us who have been around the block for a while we've had to build our own support system, and usually it is not within our agency.
Thank you, Lydia, for bringing that up and pointing that out, that PLCs are, we like to say, teacher-led and student-focused, but they also have to be driven by what data shares with us, right? And so it's really important for those who are engaging with professional learning communities to have a close partnership with their data managers so they can get data and not necessarily in real time, but in a timely manner so that they can utilize it with those PLC teams. And so having that structure in place that enables and empowers the data managers to be able to do that without additional stress is really important. So I think some of these questions that we've got here today will definitely help us with identifying what some of those needs are and what that picture perfect support system looks like for you all. And I just want to say, as you're jumping in, thank you, Lydia, for being a really great example. She jumped on camera, she unmuted, and she shared with us. If you can't be on camera, that's okay, but please feel free to unmute and tell us what's on your mind and join the conversation, because this is definitely a discussion-based session.
And as we said, we are the question askers and you are the question answerers. So, you know, part of the process is we really are hoping you might answer a few of these questions. Okay, so everybody's had a chance to read these questions. I won't read them off. We'll get kind of going here in the interest of time. But here is the first question, you know, kind of looking at people new to the job. The second question will be more on experienced folks, but at that session there were, you know, a lot of people new to the job. It's a very daunting task for people who are new. That dominated a big part of that discussion at the SI session, and it definitely is a recurring theme at TE and WIOA 2 network meetings. So I'll just ask, and you know, what type of training and resources you know, might allow somebody to get started as somebody new to the job? Are there specific skills we need to work on building? Is it less about skills and more about just giving opportunities for networking? You know, what sort of things could any of us do to help new people get started with this task? And hey, Lydia, jump at it. You got it.
So for me, I relied heavily years ago on, there was no one in our area, well, let me rephrase that, in our agency who knew TOPS Pro Visual, who was willing to train, who was willing to do any of that. So it was myself, my boss, and the TE support. So I was all by myself. So the opportunity to have a mentor or to network with people and get some help, I think is amazing. So having the network where you can call someone or have someone sit with you is fantastic. I'm not taking anything away from the tech support because they're amazing, but having to call Kevin Locke and Patricia McBean every single day. Like, I'm pulling names from back in the day.
Right.
I will never forget when Patricia was like, thank God, someone with a brain.
Right.
But it was just, so
2.5 hours of time with Kevin, nothing beat it, did it?
Well, I mean, he had to set my password several times. So I had to learn the hard way. So that networking opportunity and being able to diversify who you're calling and get different points of view is fantastic. And now that we're in a different world of adult education and we have a consortium, encouraging the consortium managers to, hey, if you have another data manager who knows what they're doing in your consortium, go ahead and let your data managers talk to each other. If you don't have data meetings, maybe you should start having data meetings. It doesn't always have to be about the individual. What do your data managers actually need? Do you know? You know, have the conversations with both of your data managers or all of your data managers. And some consortiums are amazing at this, and some of them are not. And that's, from very small consortiums to very large consortiums and everything in between. But having those conversations with more than just one person there, or just one person who is making all the decisions, I think is very, very important. And having multiple voices, is very important. That's my 2 cents.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Doreen, you've got your hand up. Do you want to contribute there, Doreen?
Yes, I'd like to address the calling technical support every single day for 6 months. There's got to be a better way to get somebody on board than relying on tech support. When you go to the checklist, it's how to do a test. It's not how to set up TE. Setting up TE without integration into our SIS system was just insane and took so long to get the hang of it. And there just has to be another way rather than calling them every single day to ask another question. And I'm like, where would I have found this in the documentation? And they point me to a 72-page document. We need a checklist to understand uploading those templates by hand. There's nothing in sight for me to get automated because my IT department's so busy doing other things. And so I'm going to continue to have to upload every single template multiple times a semester. And I think I might finally have the hang of it, but I'd be totally happy to work with somebody to go through everything that it took to get to where I am now, to create some sort of training specifically for a new person.
So what I'm hearing, Doreen, is the need for better onboarding and better onboarding resources so that someone who is brand new has access to, here's the quick way to get the things that you need to get instead of just a very long document that they kind of scrub through and have to call a lot to get support.
I refer back to the actual TE upload list all the time. And that's not on site anywhere that I know of. I mean, I have the data dictionary and I live and breathe the data dictionary too. But there are just so many things that we learned along the way that I don't think we had to learn the hard way. And the quirk of it is that I'm at a college rather than an adult school, and everything is very adult school centric and not college centric, and we're different.
You're from Cabrillo, right? If you don't mind my asking.
This is moldy laundry. So
okay, there you go. It's all right. That's what we said. Bottom of the pile.
It is at the bottom. I checked to see who else is online before I even spoke. And
oh, okay. All right. There you go.
Thank you, Doreen.
So people are liking what you had to say. I'll say any other hands up. Anybody else want to address anything? I'll just say, hey, Kay, Linda, Ann, Usha, a lot of really good comments here on the chat. Any of you wanted to add to what you chatted?
Well, there's a lot of comments about the data team process within the consortium. And I think that there have been some sessions that are scheduled or were scheduled. So I think we can kind of catch up on some of those. I believe South Bay is doing one this afternoon. I know Poway has a data team. So what does that look like when you have your data manager working together with your teachers and your administrators and your counselors and your transition people? I think that's critical. And I know, I believe, let's see Francisco, talks about how he mentored and assisted colleagues in his consortium. And I think, that should be an expectation. Someone called out your consortium manager. So how do we work all together? I think that's very important.
Okay, well, this is good feedback. Thank you. I don't see anybody else's hand up. So, hey, we've got other questions. So we'll go ahead and go to the next one. And hey, I'll let Sudi, maybe take command and control of the second question.
Thanks, Jay. So our question for you is, what additional training will provide the timely information needed to continue to excel for you all as the data managers and those who support data managers, including skill building or networking opportunities? We've already heard networking opportunities. We'd like to see more data meetings within the consortium groups, better onboarding, but what other training needs do you have? And I see a couple coming up in here. Tutorial on advanced filtering would be really useful. Okay, good to know. Other training needs, and if you want to unmute and come on cam and share, please do let us know. What additional training needs do you have aside from what's already been mentioned? Go ahead, Lydia.
So coming out of the newer user, and I know Jay knows exactly where I'm going with this. So coming away from the newer user a little bit, but as far as skill building for the advanced user, that would be fantastic. Something that, and this would have to be really thought out about a little bit more and at a little bit deeper level. For someone who is already familiar with some of the schemas and the topics that we've kind of discussed a lot. But for those advanced users who want to dig deeper into their data, who want to know the whys and who want to go, I don't know, Gary wants to go into statistics, and we talked about that at the Summer Institute session a little bit, but that would be great, you know, so that we can not get, and this is going to be bad, but get a little bored, you know, with the day in and day out of our job. So to keep it interesting. And then of course, always networking is always great. But as far as taking it up to the next notch so that we don't become complacent with our jobs for those of us who have been around the block.
So do you mean kind of going beyond just cleaning up and sharing what the data is, but actually doing some data analysis and trend identifications and things like that to identify equity gaps and those kinds of things? Great.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Really good suggestion. Maybe host a monthly networking meeting.
Doreen?
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Doreen.
On the positive side, I walked into the position where we were already doing reports at the consortium level of the consortium data. And so there were some existing, basically PowerPoints that they were used to looking at, and I refined them a lot along the way. And I've never shared those with anybody, but my systems are close to set up. They could be better, so that I copy and paste the blue sheet, the agency report, into Excel, and it creates some reports.
Nice.
That are, you know, it doesn't go straight to a chart because you have to paste special to clean things up, but it definitely takes you to an entire PowerPoint around enrollment and TE going, you know, and literacy gains and everything in charts and graphs, because we're not showing directly out of TE to the board. And I've never been to a training where, you know, we looked at how to take that data to the board. And then the other thing that we did is the board said, great, we want it by region. And Jay is familiar with this fun project. They wanted to know North County versus South County. And there was no way to do that in a reasonable manner in TE. And so we asked for a flat file. I don't know if Jay wants everybody to know that that's a thing. But with that flat file, I was able to do all kinds of analysis way quicker and easier than pulling out, you know, out of a PDF.
Okay, Chris, you've had your hand up too.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is kind of a shoot the moon thing that just came up a little recently. Maybe a simple tutorial on statistics, because, you know, what we did recently is we took two classes and we looked at the attendance rate for both classes, and they were, you know, one of them was an evening, one of them was a day thing, and there wasn't, you know, there was a little bit of a change, but there wasn't a big difference. And so, you know, 4 of us in our leadership team sat around and saying, so who remembers their statistics? Who knows this? Is this a big enough difference? It's an actual difference, or is this just some sort of like little piddly thing that, that happens because of random chance, and no one really quite knew the answer to that. So if that would be a neat thing. I know it's off, left field, and but I thought I'd bring it up.
That's a really good point. And I think I'm totally hearing everything we're saying. Doreen already has kind of created her own little tool so that she can kind of do that data analysis piece and maybe larger understanding of what CASAS can provide, so we can get more regional information, as well as better ways to share these data reports and information with stakeholders. But then I'm also hearing the need for a better understanding from a statistical standpoint. Like, do we all have shared understanding of what this means? And I really like the point that you just made, Chris, in terms of what really does indicate a trend and what is too narrow of a margin to count as a trend. So I think that's also important. What about for those who are supporting you, or for those you have to work with? Can you think of any kind of training needs that, for example, I'm a PLC leader, what do I need to know in order to know what to ask you for? Or what are the things that you wish people would know when they come to you with these kinds of requests? What kind of training support can we provide to those who are supposed to be there supporting you, or that you provide information to? Go ahead, Lydia.
So I think that that's a question that really is district by district. At my agency, it goes through the director of every program. So I don't have the PLC leads coming directly for me for information. In the Wayback Machine, they would. Everything now goes from as a lead to the director, from the director to me. So how do I want to say this? So it is very interesting. It makes things a little bit more colorful. So it turns into a game of telephone, trying to figure out what exactly do you need to effectively look at data, especially when you are running through the gambit of admin turnover. We've kind of stabilized at my agency as far as that's concerned. But then it is the retraining of high school admin into the world of adult education, which is always fun. And then once they get it, then it starts all over again. And then a new director of adult ed comes online, and you're like, okay, we're now switching gears and reevaluating. So it's, and I'm sure we're not the only organization who has had that flux going on. But again, we're finally stabilizing. But at least as far as medium-sized agencies that are trying to work within our confines, I no longer have the luxury of being able to speak with my PLC leads and saying, all right, so what exactly would you like to look at? And what are you trying to accomplish? It very much is program director letting me know this is what they want to look at. Which makes things a little bit challenging.
It does. I completely hear what you're saying. And I know for our participants who go through CalPro Leadership Institute, they get to hear from Jay and they get to hear from Carol about what does this data mean? How do I utilize it? That kind of thing. But what I'm hearing is a broader need of teachers and teacher teams to understand what data is available and what specifically to ask for when they're requesting data from data managers, just to make that game of telephone a little bit more streamlined and clearer. Okay, thank you. So I think at this point, Jay, we're ready to move on to the next question. I see your comment, Francisco, admin and clerical turnover is an issue, and that's not the first time I've heard that too. So thank you all so much for sharing with me on that question, and I'll pass it back to Jay.
One other quick thing is Lydia and Priscilla, I'll just say you can scroll up. You've been beckoned. I'll leave it up to you, Lydia, and you, Priscilla, whether you want to respond to the chat or not, but I'll just note you're being called out. Okay, so Carol, I'm going to let you take the ball on this next question about types of opportunities.
Okay, so the next question we have for all of you on this call today is what types of opportunities will help you leverage all that you know and do, and who needs to have a better understanding of what you do and why it is so important. And so far, I've heard that there's been some turnover, learning of roles and responsibilities. I'm also curious to know how many of you work in isolation as opposed to working with a team at your site or your consortium. So please, comments, questions.
Somebody's hand, can't tell who. Oh, Lydia. Oh,
Lydia, thank you, Lydia.
Like I needed to ask.
So there are times where I feel like I work in isolation. I'm party of one, and yet when there are projects, obviously I'm in the director's office, and then I work with her team, which are under the directors under her. But then if there are problems at the testing sites, then I go out to the testing sites and troubleshoot all those problems. So it is, the data manager is not it's collaboration when it needs to be, and then it's isolation when you're working. And it's not, it can be exceedingly lonely, especially if you're someone who enjoys talking to people and you're an extrovert. So it's not always the most fun, but if you enjoy data and digging and trying to find out where the problems are and problem solving, then it's great. But it is lonely.
Thank you, Lydia. So I'm reading the chat also. There's quite a few people who are in the same situation as you. They all work in isolation. They're working in a small consortium. I do know that there are some opportunities if your teams are in like a PLC, a professional learning community, because then you're working with a team and not in isolation. I don't know if there's anybody out there that has that opportunity to work in a professional learning community or a data team or any kind of a team where you don't feel like you're working in isolation. Can anyone else out there share what their experiences are, so that your why, like Lydia's asking, about data, you all work on it together. It's not just the data manager, all alone.
I can tell you that I've asked.
Okay, thank you.
I have asked for data meetings, and I have asked to be teamed up in our consortium with the other data manager, since we're a small consortium, and I was told no. So that's what what led to my initial comment early on.
Okay, and Lydia, you've got an invitation in the chat, so go check it out. Doreen, you have your hand up.
I work with 5 researchers, but I'm only assigned 20% to the consortium, but I still have the access to all of them and a manager. That's awesome. And so I have access to the SQL database for the whole college, and they're teaching me how to use SQL so I can get enrollment data and stuff from there as well. So I'm feeling very lucky, and anybody can reach out to me too. I'll put my email, and I would love to hear from more college people, Lydia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kay also has a comment in here about the differences between large and small agencies. Absolutely. Perhaps establishing a network of data managers from small agencies with mentorship support. Thank you, Kay. A great opportunity. So more formalized. Thank you.
Erica has her hand up.
Erica, thank you.
So our consortium, what we do is that we have monthly meetings with all of the other data managers within the 5 schools within the consortium, including the college within our consortium. And so we all work together to bring up issues on the table of what each school is experiencing as an agency, as well as our data. And so we all work together to ensure our data is matching to where we all have set standards. So all of our data kind of consolidates together. So we're not having different issues. We're not looking at different things at the same time. And so we've even discussed together, okay, the definitions of or using the data dictionary. We've discussed certain things of how we can tag things to determine as a consortium, and it has helped along the way. For a while, I've always been alone because we're a very small agency compared to the other 4 schools that I work with. And so having that network as well as that reliability of for me to just reach out if I have one data question, there are able to answer any questions that, and everyone has different perspectives of how they work things. And so it really has helped us on our consortia coordinator getting us together and discuss these issues and getting everyone to be in the same page. So it really helps a lot to have that discussion with your consortium coordinator for all data managers to work together to ensure that the data is being inputted correctly, as well as bring up issues where maybe some person is more knowledgeable than others. And that's how we're able to learn together and train each other.
Thank you, Erica, for sharing that experience that you have with your team out there in your consortium. I'm also seeing in the chat, Maria, if you want to unmute and share about your working group of consortium members it's NAC, NAAEC. If you want to share that experience so people will have a better idea of how you work within your consortium.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Maria Einaudi. I'm a transition liaison at Oakland Adult and Career Education. And there's some other people here in this meeting who I work with as well. So the consortium is made up of a variety of adult schools and the Peralta Community College District. And we have been looking at data for a few years now, and we've had sort of been bumpy because where we pulled data from, what are we supposed to be adding, entering data into? I think some people, may be using Community Pro. We have stopped using Community Pro. And the community colleges have a different reporting system than the adult schools. So we were spending a lot of time looking at definitions of things that we should be tracking and sort of how to improve upon that, how to improve and make data systems more usable, user-friendly. One of the other things that I mentioned in this is that we all have sort of different access to parts of the data. And so you can't drill down in the same depth if not everybody is sharing the exact same system. So anyway, that's that. And we meet pretty regularly, at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. Sometimes if it's demanding a little bit more. But we also do have the manager. I'll stop real quickly in a moment, but the manager of our consortium is doing a really excellent job of tying all the pieces together. Okay, thanks.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments about your experiences in the Peralta area, community college area. To meet more than once a month just tells you how much you guys value your data and how much you are making that a priority to get together. I also know, and we'll go on to the next question, but Richard from South Bay Consortium made a comment about, talking about shop with other people. I do know that they do have a session this afternoon on their data team process. Richard, do you want to unmute and make any comments about that? Or then we will move on after you make your comment. Thanks. Okay, Jay, I think we can move on to the next question.
I thought he was here too. Okay, so looking at just overall statewide activities or anything regional, we've kind of covered this, I think, within Carol's question. Some of you are looking for networking with small agencies or networking, with specific roles and so on. But I'll just keep it any specific activities that we could offer from a statewide perspective, or anything that we could facilitate locally that you think might help. I see a lot of comments in the chat that kind of address this already. But I'll just say, does anybody have anything you wanted to add on this? Okay, Doreen.
I was just thinking about this duality between the adult school progress with CASAS and the college progress with the student success dashboard and launch board, and getting people to understand how you measure progress at the college was really hard. They really wanted to see our CASAS data, and we're like, no, CASAS doesn't have anything to do with adult ed at the college level. You have to look at progress of students progressing through ESL levels. And they're like, well, is there a test? And we're like, no, it's whether the teacher passes them or not. And they were just horrified because they're doing this super fancy, are we testing everybody and what level are you at? And at the college, we're like, oh yeah, we think you passed a non-credit class. And that counts.
So just curious, Doreen, who do you mean when you say they? You're interesting comments, but who is it that's making these comments that you're describing? Just curious.
The adult school doesn't understand why the college can't be measured using the same metrics as the adult schools measured.
Okay.
And it makes them angry because it's very wishy-washy to them, but that's the way it is. And so I've really been pushing to look at the launch board data, and now that it's much more cleaned up and easier to use, but we haven't ever really, I mean, sometimes we have West Ed and Jay in the same room, but it doesn't happen very often. But it's those two things are like hand in hand. We need to look at whether students are getting minimum wage and how many of them have jobs after the fourth quarter and all of these metrics that are part of it. But somehow we always end up focusing only on the gains piece of it. But whether they get a job or not maybe is more important than that. And there doesn't seem to be much focus on that. Even if you look at the agenda of this whole conference, there's not much focus on, on looking at that other piece of the data.
I see, Jay, I see Ryan Whetstone from SAC Consortium, that they also have a data group. So I don't know if he has any information he can share on working with their community college. Doreen, thank you so much for that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. The interesting conversation. Jay and I are fast old friends. I'm listening to you guys, and Mount SAC is the only college, and they do report their data in TE. And so they do a transfer process to get that information out of MIS into TE. The only thoughts that I just wanted to just kind of put out there were, I do think that it absolutely benefits people if you can get your consortium to create a data group. I think that's a necessary component, and to have leaders that would not support that is beyond me. And maybe it's just because of where I am, but I'm in the second largest consortium, at least by student count in the state. Or I'm the manager of it. And I think our group is very valuable. Several of our team members are on this meeting right now. And I think because we met, monthly for years, it's just integrated into our process. They communicate with each other, they support each other. Recently, we did have a data coordinator who she resigned about just over a year ago, kind of pre-COVID. And we didn't fill the position, but from a personal level, I actually felt like that coordinator was to help all the schools get back on board as we rebooted adult education across our region, and just made sure they all had CASAS in place and their SIS system in place, and that was all there. So now they're kind of running. And more recently, when we met, and a big thanks to Jay and Casas, Margaret Teskey. We had one of your data techs, Scott Gutman, participated in our last data meeting we had last month. And it was outstanding because it was just this back and forth with our data coordinators and Scott, and they were sharing screens going between ASAP and TE, and just really able to speak the same language and dealing with issues that they were having on site. And so that was really good. And so one thing I think is good to have is a person who is very familiar with the technical side of data and transfer with both programs, especially with TE and ASAP, at least for my region. And the next level I would look at is like, if I can just get a tech person from ASAP in that meeting. They're having similar issues, and they're isolated. If you're sitting at your school by yourself and you can't get that tech on the line, but it's different when you're in that group with 8 other schools and they're data people with similar issues. Some other things that kind of came down over the years. Initially, Jay, I used to love your presentation you did that really defined the data and what constituted a data point for outcomes. And so we reviewed that early on. I do think we need a simple, I'm gonna call it a layperson data guide for the data elements of CAPE, and a simple onboarding guide. That idea that somebody was calling for technical assistance every day, every question should have been written down. And that is the foundation of a guidebook for me. That now we could use as sort of an onboarding process for new people coming in. But the interesting side on the analysis is, Jay, I run a lot of our consortium reports myself, and then I share them with our groups and with our administrators. And we look at that data. They can look at it simply at a school lens, and they look at it through a consortium lens. And there's so many other things moving in adult education right now. We don't really have the resources to do those deep dives, except to just kind of say, where are you right now? What's your enrollment? What's your persistence? Now, Jay knows I'm kind of pressing for an equity type report, something that is a turnkey push button. And the latest thing that's coming through my head is something that kind of shows ROI, like a return on investment type report. Is the latest thing that was going through my head. Sudi did send me a little bit of some information on this last year, but I think it's something that would be interesting to show also. But all that to say, I really do think a data group is important. And if you don't have one where you are, tap into one. And now that it's virtual, anybody out there that wants to plug into one, you're welcome to plug into ours. But all my adult schools use ASAP 3 and 4. And the college does participate. But I just saw, I believe, is anybody from North Orange on the line? Because I think North Orange is having a group that's kind of focused from the community college side and how they're handling their non-credit data and also data transfer. So I think that's also
right. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to spring on a couple things you just said. One is I was going to mention, the new, it's not there yet. It should be out soon, but the latest and greatest CAPE reported TE is one that Ryan was kind of the architect of, and it might kind of relate to what Doreen was talking about too. It will be a consortium level report that can be done by zip code, with that, I think, maybe being the best field to use to try to, look for results, by region within a consortium. The other thing I wanted to kind of pounce on with what Ryan just said, he kind of alluded to it without getting too detailed, is I've heard Ryan talk about Mount SAC. Maria brought up some stuff in Oakland, and Doreen in Santa Cruz, and so on. What I'm wondering is, are there any of you that have gone crazy and collaborated with neighboring consortia. That is, I know Ryan is doing all sorts of crazy stuff within Mount SAC. Has Ryan taken a flying leap and pole vaulted over to Chaffee or Rio Honda? Has Doreen, maybe looked at Gavilan or, gone down to Monterey or anything like that? Just kind of wondering, are there any, instead of intra-consortium groups, any inter-consortium groups that any of you have tried?
I'm interested to hear that too, because we know there's consortiums in the north and the south that regularly get together to
Right.
share information. So are we talking about data in those consortium groups?
Okay, thank you, Kay.
Thank
So
you,
you're
Kay.
saying Carrick and Solano kind of tried that, at least they stuck their toe in the pond or whatever.
And State Center, thank you, Sherry.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, not that you're required to, but just wondering, that was what I was kind of gleaning with Ryan's comments. Okay, well, let's, just because we do have more questions, this is one that some of you brought up when I was asking you prior to this session. Not really COVID-19, I probably wrote this poorly, but what a lot of you have been bringing up is all the turnover going on during COVID-19, kind of moving out of COVID-19. I'll just say in regional and statewide network meetings, there's been a ton of discussion on this, but sort of like the PLC issue, most of the discussion has been related to teachers, not really data folks or other staff outside of teachers. So any of you with anything to say about staff turnover, specifically as it relates to data managers, to data collection efforts at your agency, maybe to, neighboring agencies within your consortium, anybody with anything to say about staff turnover? I mean, it can be staff turnover in general, but, specifically anything related to how it might affect data managers and data collection. Anybody with anything?
I'll chime in on that, Jay.
Please.
It slows the process. It throws the wrench in it. One of my districts lost their data person, and it usually is just one person. And if that one person's been there for years, all that knowledge went out with them. And you really have to get the new person on board. Hopefully they are coming from a data position somewhere else, so they have this basic understanding of a student database and transfers. But if not, just this basic process that needs to occur, and simple, kind of baby steps, but it's happening, and it's happening with mine. And that's why I was saying that my consortium schools have reached across to other schools within the consortium to almost create sort of an ad hoc training, for someone to get them up to speed. And they've been collaborative in helping each other like that. But that's the thing. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it. A lot of people are moving.
There's a really great comment in the chat, documentation. And I would take it a little bit farther than just what Chris mentioned about having your data person write down exactly what their processes are and things like that. I think that's a great best practice. But I also think if you have, for administrators, for lead teachers, TOSAs, those kinds of things, making documentation of how you utilize data so you know what to ask for makes it a lot easier when someone new comes in and the data manager doesn't have to hold their hand to help get them onboarded to what they're supposed to be asking for. Because I think this turnover issue, the turnover in data managers and then also the turnover in staff can also put strain on data managers. Thank you so much for bringing that up in the chat.
I also
That's
see
a
another
critical missing piece.
Yeah, I also see one, how are consortia addressing their 3-year plan goals considering the lag time inherent in Launch Board 2021 data? We have CASAS data reports for that year, but not college. I ask because the 2021 academic year seems to be where the pandemic is really being felt. Anybody else have some
chime in on that?
Thank you,
I'm
Ryan.
going to say use what you have. There is no penalty to not have the latest data. So don't stress out about what you can't get your hands on. There's somebody tell me something different, but I'm not aware of a repercussion for not having that. My only understanding is that you cite your data source and whatever conclusions you're drawing from it, and I don't know anybody out there that's going to question it.
Okay. All right. These lots of really good comments in the chat. Just because we are, these are great comments, but hey, enough of this. What can we do for you stuff? Ha ha ha. Time to figure out what you can do for us. So I'll let Sudi go ahead. Here's the questions. Very similar to the other way around, just kind of looking at it, you know, mostly from kind of an inside out perspective. But I'll let Sudi take the first one here. You know, how can you help us collaborate and intervene? Go, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Jay.
Stealing your thunder, sorry.
You always, Jeepers Creepers, Jay, just stealing everything.
Creepers, Willikers.
Just throwing a new slogan in
That's
there.
right.
So one of the key threads we've heard throughout this conversation is how much collaboration is beneficial to this process. We see consortiums like Ryan mentioned earlier with his consortium, which is inherently extremely collaborative, not just around data, but around equity and so many other topics. And so we know that this is really important, but it's also important for us as professional development providers, as those who support you, to know what kind of collaboration would you like to see across these various systems that you engage with, from CalPro to CAPE to CASAS, and how would you like to see that move forward so that we can better support you? There's some things we've been kind of percolating and thinking about and things like that that we want to do. We want to hear from you all and what type of collaboration that you need to see at the state leadership project and CAPE TAP level to see how we can better support you. Doreen said she's not able to get all the information that's in launch report. Was that in reference to what Ryan was mentioning or what we were talking about in the previous question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm hearing, I keep seeing kind of a repeated trend in here in terms of understanding the variances and nuances between adult ed data and community college data and how those pieces work together. Makes me think back to what used to be called the Neil and Jay Roadshow. Maybe that's something that needs to come back. Okay, great. Any other areas that you'd like to see us continue to do this collaborative work? Currently, we do these things for our Leadership Institute. Jay has been helping me with kind of revising our thinking about where do we start with data in terms of our PLC Institute. But, you know, we really want to, and also in terms of when we talk about coaching, the various coaching elements and making sure we're making data usage an integral part of that. But Francisco said, yeah, the Neil and Jay Roadshow would be coming back. I don't think it would be called Neil and Jay anymore. It might be Jay and other.
Who knows?
It could be. Can we bring back the old band back together?
One thing I was just going to add a little bit more to the turning it inside out spin. So we've had a lot of talk about, hey, what can Sudi do? What can Carol do? What can Jay do? What can the state do? So anything that you can, so instead of what we can help you with, what do you have to offer that you could bring to the table that would really allow Carol to do wonderful things or really allow Sudi to do wonderful things or anybody else here? What is it that you might bring that could really help us, you know, help everybody else, so to speak?
I think I would love to see Doreen's presentation. I know that's on my list.
Ditto.
You should put it in the chat.
Doreen, you might be getting a follow-up email from multiple people when you're asking for that presentation. And thank you, Burr, for your kind comment.
Not necessarily asking for that, but just seeing what sort of things are out there that you could do that would help.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate all the networking that's going on, you know, people
responding.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I just appreciate the people who are outreaching to network like Ryan and the other folks out there, Doreen, you know, I'm willing to work with other people. So thank you.
Yeah, I think something for us to think about, Jay, is a way for us to gather and share resources, because I think what we're hearing is that there's a lot of different tools out there. There's different lists. There's the data dictionary everybody keeps talking about, but there's also, cheat sheets we've all kind of created for ourselves in terms of our processes and how to make these things work. And I think in terms of acclimating someone new to the role, it might be really good for us to have a general idea of what are you all actually sharing right now, and then how can we, put that down and distill it into easily digestible chunks that can be shared with someone who's new to this role.
And I'm definitely seeing that there are parts of sessions that need to focus on or networking on the procedures and the input of data and just accessing, the CASAS TE or launch board. And then the second group is, the why and the delving into the data team process, two different systems going on, one more technical and the other more process oriented.
Thank you. And Doreen, you mentioned the data folks might be interested in joining the RP group. Do you want to share a little bit more about what that is?
That's what I heard about, the RP group.
Doreen, do you want to enlighten us lay folks on here about what that is?
So that's a group of research, community college researchers across the state. Their conference is actually happening right now in 13 feet of snow in Tahoe. And they do a conference twice a year. Plus we have regional meetings. Plus they do like lunch and learn webinars all around data. Their focus is around college data. So there's a lot of talk about AB 705, but that's certainly relevant to all of us folks as well. And so it's not totally targeted to the particular problems we address, but it's certainly related. And if enough of us were there, then we could change the conversation a little bit. Anyway, there's the link. You can take a look at it and see if it's something that it's free. It's just a group of researchers in the state.
Thank you, Doreen, so much for sharing. Right, so that's something great to have access to, investigate and look into it and see if that's something that you want to utilize. And so I think we'll be sharing our email addresses later, but if you do have more things that you want to share in terms of what you're sharing with new people that are going to be onboarded, one of the needs that we heard a lot was that, just the need for better support for people who are coming into the role, as well as the need for a deeper dive for people who are more experienced in this role. So it definitely sounds like a multi-level approach is sort of needed here.
Anything else on that? Just in the interest of time, we'll move here to the next question so we can get through. So we have what can you do for us in terms of helping out, new folks, anything that might, help experienced folks get a larger role. Maybe this is to benefit you personally. Maybe this is to benefit the, role of data manager just overall, but anything that, we could all kind of do that might allow more success for everyone. Go ahead, Francisco.
Okay, good morning. So I think one of the, and this is going, mainly for administrators and, people doing the hiring, is that if we were to have the clerical staff be actually full-time, I know that sometimes is not possible, but maybe that could be an incentive to keep them on the long run and not having to do such a high turnover, because within our consortium, 2 agencies have new people, and I've been, just looking through the weeds, and I know that they are hourly part-time, and most of the people want something more. So I think a way that if we want to get clear, accurate data, is having these positions be full-time instead of part-time. So then that way we could retain those people. I mean, we have such a high turnover rate with staff anyways, because they're mostly hourly. But maybe if in our consortium level and administrators could see the benefit of investing those extra dollars in full-time positions, our data is going to be much more cleaner. The cleaner the data, the more funds that will come into our program. So that's something that I advocate for a lot with clerical staff, is if all possible, have them be full-time.
Thank you, Francisco. And I know that's kind of a tricky area because it depends on budgets and what people can do, but I think that's a really good point about incentivizing those things. Burr, I see you joined us on camera. Did you want to weigh in? Or are you just responding to Lydia's challenge to turn on your cameras?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. Lydia's happy. She convinced one person to get on camera. Major victory, huh?
Two more popped up.
Okay, all right. Okay, you know what? I'll have Carol go ahead and move to the next question here. Are there any, you know, how can we promote some of these opportunities you're coming up with? You've had lots of good ideas. You know, how can we kind of help you, you know, be on stage helping everybody else? Anybody with any ideas on that? Sorry, go ahead. I keep on talking, don't I?
That's okay, Jay. Keep it going.
Yeah. But anybody with any ideas on different opportunities that you could probably, that we could create where you could be on center stage, helping other people out with some of these things we've been discussing?
I'm thinking that, you know, I'll just start off. I think that there have been a lot of people in this session that could get together and collaborate and create a session and share at one of our next adult education sessions. Ryan, you know, is one. Thatcher, I saw your name come up. Doreen, you know, there are many of you. State Center, there's some people up at Carrick. You know, what are you guys doing that is helping support our data managers in the good work that they do, the important work that they do?
So sort of like the extension of reverse panel discussion. So now we'll turn you inside out and make you the reverse panel.
Hey, sometimes the best information comes from practitioners, not necessarily those of us who call ourselves experts.
Absolutely. I have to tell you, you know, when you work at an agency, your data person is really important because they are the ones that are showing and the evidence that students are learning or not learning. You know, it is really, really important.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so I guess we'll try a new question, you know, shake it out with a new one here. You know, are there some maybe statewide, you know, maybe network meetings, CalPro sessions, CASAS trainings, et cetera, you know, where you think you might be able to help either, you know, as a trainer, as an advisor, or if you don't really want to serve any of these roles, anything that Sudi and Carol and Jay should just kind of do without your help that would help you anyway.
Thank you, Janice, for mentioning Bethany. We have her email address. We can ask her questions. And then just to extend on the question, like when we're talking about things that you're doing as a data manager or with data, we're not just talking about, you know, just looking at student persistence and gains, but also how are you using data to inform your programming and practices, whether it's PLCs, in your IET pathway selections, how are you utilizing data, student interest, labor market information? There's so many different vast areas this fits into. How are you using data to be responsive to immigrants who are integrating into your programs and those kinds of things? So go ahead, Doreen.
Oh my gosh, how come the 3-year plan didn't come up till now?
It did earlier in the conversation, but not in this regard.
In the chat a few times. It's come up in the chat, but anyway.
Oh my gosh. So the 3-year plan, why are we all doing it in silos? It would be awesome if we could figure out some systems, and having that data sheet is great. That's an example of something that was made for everybody that we can all use. But I'm sure there are other things that we could do with our 3-year plan. I don't know, a CASAS 3-year plan, you know, I don't know, something so that we aren't reinventing the wheel on filling in that data section. The census reports, I guess that might be on that data sheet. But imagine if somebody just pulled a report for the entire state and each of us could grab our data for things that are on the 3-year plan. Could be on the data sheet, but it's an idea.
No, that's good. I'm going to violate one of my internal things. I was going to not respond to any of this, but I'm going to break my own code and respond to that and say, you know, yeah, that's a good idea. We will put, I will put that, at least put it on the agenda, so to speak, with, you know, statewide WIOA TE and, you know, regional network meetings. You know, I'll start kind of putting that in the hopper with emphasis, like you said, on maybe ways to have, you know, share. I mean, I kind of think our regional WIOA meetings might be good for that, just because that usually, you know, typically would have 4 or 5 consortia within one region. You know, the 8 or 10 Bay Area consortia are at the Bay Area meeting, and the 4 or 5 that are in the Inland Empire and are at my IE meeting, and so on. So that might be a good way to bring different consortium heads together to do exactly what you're saying, Doreen.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump into, Jay. I think providing some expertise, the session I attended with you and Toby on the number of students who do not have 12 hours. I think there's a lot of information that we can gather as far as gaps and what are we doing at our sites to lose these students. You know, what is the reason? You know, we spend so much money on marketing and recruiting, but what about the ones that we lose? So I think that information is really critical and would like more conversation on that.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll take this one here. Are there any lessons learned? You know, this is kind of in conclusion here. So, you know, we've got 5 minutes or so. So kind of whatever question you want to bring up, you know, too. But the last one, anything over the last year and a half, and the last year and a half, I guess, means different things to different people, but it's a memorable year and a half, whether we like it or not, I think. So anything that's happened, you know, since, say, March 13th, 2020, that is worth sharing, whether it relates over just in general or anything specific about these data manager roles and responsibilities we've been discussing. Make sure you have a support system. Anybody with any pearls of wisdom that they've come up with over the last year that, gee, everybody will benefit if they kind of hear it? Surely everybody has all kinds of pearls of wisdom like that.
Jay?
Yes.
I'll throw it. You know, the only thing that just keeps bugging me is capturing all the elements. I'm always disturbed when I see zeros in spaces where I feel like I should see numbers. And my schools are just, well, actually they're doing pretty good, but no, but there are spaces where I say, I see this number is low. This cannot be the number that we have for, okay, oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember the element, but like formerly incarcerated. What's that data element? And I see some really low number, and that's been a discussion point to say, why is that number so low? You know, we promote ourselves as being an agencies that support this population, or foster youth. You know, where's the breakdown here? Why are we not capturing, you know, this number? I hear anecdotal stories about these folks, you know, so just kind of making sure that we're capturing all the elements that tell our story, you know, so, and quantify it, you know, I mean, it's, we have qualitative too, but I think we quantify it also. And I had mentioned earlier about return on investment, and Bert, thank you for popping that piece in there. But that, and it just make sure we keep the messages getting down to the granular level. I wish we had a state data meeting that was almost like this, a real troubleshooting type meeting. You know, the one where you just come and talk issues. So my data group is kind of evolving into that. We're like, come on, they don't want to see my reports. They kind of live in this stuff every day. I mean, I can tell them what I see, but it's like, okay, Ryan, these are the issues we're having right now. So we need to kind of work through this together, get somebody in here who can help us, so we can keep this moving. So I would like to see a monthly statewide data type meeting, that could also help some of the smaller schools or the lone wolves out there that need to connect. And I think my schools could benefit from connecting to a broader network where it's a troubleshooting forum, that we really can come there in a safe space to kind of talk about how we're handling certain things.
Okay, thank you. Anybody with any other ideas like that? Okay, I guess I'll just say, and any general ideas, anybody itching with any answers for which you have not received the question? I guess that's always the best way to end a reverse panel discussion is, hey, what questions were you anticipating having us ask you that we didn't bother asking? Any questions like that where, gee, I've sat here for an hour and a half and nobody's even brought this up, sort of like Doreen's, how did we get an hour and 20 minutes into it without bringing up the 3-year plan? Anything like that, that might have been missing that you want to make sure we, is there going to be a part 3? Okay, well, I think Carol brought that up earlier that, yeah, there are some ideas for, I don't know when the next latest and greatest statewide event will be, but yeah, there's a lot of really good ideas for that, I do believe. I'll need to pick up the pieces though before I can come up with a better, more specific answer to that one. All right. Okay, hand up, Doreen, sorry.
We have not discussed how to get people to take action with our.
Okay, so what's a reverse panel discussion? So you need not be the answer necessarily, Doreen, but I'll bring it back to all of you. What would your answer be to Doreen's question about how can we all take action and start? That's a little bit related to the what can you do for us? What do we all have to bring to the table that will enable all of us, including, Jay, Sudi, and Carol, to kind of move forward with some of this?
Oh, I'm not talking about action you're going to take. I'm talking about my consortium members.
Okay.
Show them data and show them data and show them data.
So how are people like Doreen and Ryan and Lydia going to lead their consortium into the charge, perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I try to look for motivators. The report that's going to the legislature, I'll be looking for that. And I'll be looking for the data that's reflected in there and say to my members here, this is where your data is going. This is who is looking at it. So just somewhere where it's actually where it is being quantified and reported beyond a discussion with it in-house, somewhere where somebody says your data, who is out there saying your data matters? And I think that's the elephant in the room. We're talking about data, but who at a decisive level says your data matters here, and we will make decisions based on it that will affect your institution, your school, your site, your students. And I understand that, there's a consortium level decision, but we're also seeing that those conversations are happening at the state level to really talk about it, really changing how they fund adult education, looking at different ways to do it now. So who does our data really matter to beyond our region?
Okay.
Love that. Who are our
Okay.
stakeholders?
Who
Who are our audience? Who does it matter to? Who do we share with? Love that.
Okay, anybody want to step in and top that one to finish off? All right. Actually, Francisco, any comment? I just see your chat here. Seems like a really good answer. Anything to clarify on what you just brought up, Francisco? Sorry, yeah, that is the drop the mic moment, but you had a good comment. What exactly did you mean by your comment though, Francisco?
Well, like for going back to the original question, like what could we do at the local level, would be to advocate for the importance of data and how data is important for, our state report, federal report, and even for our local. If we want our programs to be visible at the district level, having good data and being able to present that data at local board meetings, that way they know more about us. And then, we're starting to get some LCFF funds because of the advocacy that we've been showing. Like, these are how many students are enrolled in the program. These are how many graduate with a high school diploma, high school equivalency. These are how many students have gotten a job within the district who were former ESL students. These are students who are learning, who are getting educated, who are in turn helping your K-12 students succeed at the local school. So all that, showing it with data of how the students have persisted and also how they have gone from one level to another level of ESL or completed their high school diploma, high school equivalency. That has also allowed us to get some additional funds from the district to support our programs as well. So I think data is important at the local level, of course, at the state level when we do all our reports, and obviously, to the federal level too, since, with WIOA funds. So I think data is important at all three levels of what I call the branch of our education government.
I have a question. Does it matter to anybody out there, or have you seen that the influence of performance-based funding with federal dollars makes a difference than with your state funding? When you look at your data, in regards to data, is there any difference? Because there are some non-WIOA people, that do not have WIOA, but those who have WIOA grant know that every data point could mean increased funding depending on your data accuracy. Any comments on that?
That's a driver.
Thanks,
that
Bert.
is that's absolutely a driver that resonates. And we still have schools that wasn't a driver for, that didn't get WIOA funding, and then that was like a wake-up call, like, what? We didn't get it? Like, no, you didn't get it. So yes, and that just kind of resounded with folks. And I was just thinking, like, when those letters come out from CDE or the chancellor's office from the top, making some kind of recommendations or saying that something is important, that matters.
Yeah.
That matters. So
Hey,
some top-down letters are good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm getting some prompting from the moderator that we're over time. So I think I probably need to pass it to Renee. But great comments, Doreen, Ryan, Carol, Sudi, Francisco, everybody. I will pass the baton over to Renee here, though, just so she can keep everything, follow through with what her task is and all that good stuff.
I think this officially makes Renee the fun police, though, right?
That's right. Yeah, well, somebody's got to do it. Hey,
Just kidding, Renee.
somebody's got to be
you're
Team
fine.
V Fairs, and hey, that Renee gets to be the lucky ducky, I guess. Renee?
Today for this session, I am. Thank you so
Yes.
much. So I have put the evaluation link for today's sessions in the chat. Thank you for joining in today's session with Jay Wright and Carol Hirota and Sudi Whalen. Thank you so much. And thank you all the participants for chiming in and being so active in the chat box and on mic. You will be welcome. You will also be able to access this recording and all sessions on the VFairs platform shortly after processing. Each session is going to be stored on the VFairs platform and accessible to all registrants through the end of this year. You can locate any kind of resources related to this and other sessions in the agenda. And if you want to view the recording, that's where you're going to be able to see the recording as well. You would just play the play button. Remediated recordings will be added to the caladulted.org website in the new year, and all registrants will be notified by email and via the newsletter when they're available. So again, thank you, and go enjoy your lunch. I know that there's some exhibitors that are sharing right now, and you may want to join in with that, or just enjoy a quiet lunch.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.